Sodium-ion batteries. They are clearly the battery technology of the future. In fact, they are clearly the most important battery the world has ever seen. Why? Well, because there is really no way for the world to go green only to be 100% renewable without sodium-ion batteries. It can't be done with lithium alone. And sodium-ion batteries have a fair few big advantages over lithium, of course, which I'm sure you know. They can be charged at freezing cold temperatures. They last longer. They're cheaper. And there was an American company who actually invented the world's longest lasting sodium batteries, rated at more than 50,000 cycles or at least 136 years of life. They planned on gigascale production. They planned on hiring thousands of staff and in fact had begun doing so to commercialize these batteries, which I can assure you are very real. But then along came Donald Trump. Hello, my friends. Welcome to the channel. I'm Sam Evans. You're watching the Electric Viking, and this is the very sad story of what I believe was the best hope for America to combat China's battery dominance. Now, Trump believes manufacturing in the US is important. He says it's more important than anything else. And yet, he's done more to hurt manufacturing and future manufacturing in the United States than any other president over the last 50 years. Natron Energy was one of the first US companies to commercialize sodium-ion battery technology, launching production in Holland, Michigan in 2024 using the patented Prussian blue electrode chemistry, designed to deliver incredibly fast charging, in fact, faster charging than any other batteries in the world, using its high power and very long life sodium batteries, which avoid safety issues like thermal runaway pretty much completely. I'm sure you've seen even home battery storage batteries can catch on fire. Even the best, the safest lithium iron phosphate batteries can catch on fire. But these new sodium batteries, they were meant to be pretty much impervious to fire. However, Natron ceased operations in September, on the 3rd of September to be precise, of 2025, citing funding issues and halting future factory expansions that had been planned, including a $1.4 billion gigafactory project in North Carolina. Even so, the technology that Natron pioneered and what the company built offer valuable insights into the state of sodium-ion batteries and where they will fit in the future. Now, for me, this story has strikingly similar parallels to the United States and their history with lithium iron phosphate batteries. Interestingly, the US actually invented lithium iron phosphate batteries, which are now the most abundant battery on the planet. But they gave up that technology and China took it, and then China dominated the global battery landscape using that exact technology. What are Natron's sodium-ion batteries? Well, Natron's batteries use Prussian blue analogues for both the cathode and anode, a chemistry that leverages sodium ions instead of lithium. This removes reliance on scarce metals like lithium, cobalt, and nickel. It uses abundant, inexpensive elements such as sodium and iron, and it makes the batteries non-flammable and safe even without elaborate containment structures. Their core product line, often marketed under names like Blue Pack, Critical Power, emphasize rapid recharge, extremely high power delivery, safety, and the longest cycle life of any batteries on the planet. Can Natron's batteries be used in electric cars? Were they even intended for that? Well, the short answer is no, they weren't intended for electric cars. They were intended for stationary and industrial energy storage, to replace coal power plants, to replace fossil fuels, and particularly to provide power to data centers, electric cars to be charged, telecom backups, EV fast charging stations, and critical power and grid support systems. So why? Why were they intended for this purpose? Well, for one, the battery energy density. Particularly with their Prussian blue electrodes, it meant they have much lower energy density than other sodium-ion batteries on the market. Energy density is around 70 watt-hours per kilogram. That is similar to, or only slightly better than lead acid batteries, but far below lithium ion EV cells. However, these batteries are much cheaper than lithium and last far longer. By comparison though, modern lithium EV batteries, they typically range from around 200, to be honest, lithium iron phosphate, if you're talking about those, from about 150 watt hours per kilogram all the way up to 300 watt hours per kilogram. And even other sodium ion chemistries such as CATL's newer sodium ion batteries, they have an energy density of 160 to 175 watt hours per kilo. That's a lot less than today's lithium ion, but they do have a couple of big advantages. Sodium ion batteries are promising for stationary grid and auxiliary applications, and Natron specific products weren't actually designed initially with EV propulsion in mind. And the reason is because it doesn't make sense to do so, right? There is no electric car in the world that will ever be driven for more than 140 years. So there was really no purpose to make a battery for both EVs and energy storage at the same time, when clearly both of these segments have very different user needs. Here's what the numbers are, right? Energy density of around 70 to 80 watt hours per kilogram. But power density is a huge advantage. The power density of these batteries is exceptionally high, and they're capable of delivering incredibly fast bursts of power and rapid charging, which makes them excel in short duration, high load situations without battery degradation you see in lithium batteries. Charging speed. Even at huge sizes, these batteries are designed to recharge fully in 15 minutes or less, and to be ready immediately with no thermal waiting. In other words, they are perfect for peaker plants. And the idea is, right, when the grid needs this power, right, between 6 to 10 p.m. in the evenings when it's sunny and everyone gets home from work and all that power is needed, then all of a sudden, these sodium batteries could inject insane amounts of power into America's grid or into grids anywhere around the world within the space of only seconds. That's something that fossil fuel power plants just can't do. This profile, low energy but high power and very fast recharge, is perfect for backup power, peak shaving, grid support, and EV fast charging stations. But of course, not ideal for electric cars. But here's the crucial issue. The cycle life is staggering. One of Natron's biggest selling points is its extreme cycle life, rated at more than 50,000 deep discharge cycles. That means, right, if one cycle is a daily full depth discharge, and that's generally the case, is particularly for energy storage, then 50,000 cycles equals 136 years of daily cycling before reaching potentially end-of-life criteria. However, these batteries are actually rated for more than 50,000 cycles. In other words, they'd last for at least 136 years based on the actual testing done by Natron. Of course, in reality, no battery in a commercial context is cycled fully every day. But the point stands. These batteries could even last longer than 136 years. And these sodium cells were engineered to outlast any lithium battery many times over. In other words, you might have to build out 3 lithium batteries or even 4 lithium battery plants, and that would last not even as long as one of these. Yeah? The first battery plant, your lithium one, might last you for, say, 35 years, your next one for 35 years, right? That's 4. So you can see how these batteries would be absolutely perfect for America's energy grid or for any energy grid. So what actually happened? Well, production scale and factory plans happened. That's what. Natron began commercial scale production at a Michigan plant in 2024 with a capacity of 600 megawatt hours per year of sodium batteries. There were ambitious plans announced in 2024 for a $1.4 billion 24 gigawatt annual capacity factory in North Carolina, a 40x scale up. This would create thousands of jobs and produce sodium-ion battery stock at gigawatt scale. And it would mean that all these data plants in the US, instead of companies like Meta having to go and build out gas power plants, they could do it with these batteries and solar. It would be the cheapest and best option available to them. However, Natron shut down operations in September 2025, halting extension plans and leaving the future of American energy at stake. Why did they do this? Well, because the Trump administration cancelled their funding that was awarded to them by the previous Biden administration. Exact cost figures for Natron's batteries weren't publicly listed before closure, but sodium-ion cells are much cheaper than lithium because, well, they don't need lithium. They use abundant materials. Sodium is much cheaper than lithium. Iron is much cheaper than cobalt and nickel. Simplified safety systems as well make them cheaper. They're non-flammable. They don't need fans. They don't need all the extra hardware needed for lithium batteries to keep them cool. There's also less reliance on geopolitically constrained supply chains. If America can build out these sodium batteries and battery factories, then it doesn't need to rely on lithium being processed in China or on rare earths being processed in China for its battery supplies. Industry observers cited that sodium ion is significantly less to produce per kilowatt hour than lithium ion, especially in grid and backup markets. A key reason companies and governments were investing heavily in sodium ion research and scaling. I mean, the world's biggest battery company, CATL, have invested more on sodium ion batteries than lithium batteries over the last few years. So who were Natron's customers? Well, Natron's batteries were sold mainly into industrial and commercial markets, specifically data centers, backup and supplemental power, telecom and critical infrastructure, reliable power with fast recharge, EV fast charging stations, power buffering and peak shaving, solar and renewable integration systems for grid support. Investors included energy and aviation companies like United Airlines, Chevron, and others supporting this promise. Notably, Natron did not sell batteries directly into mainstream EV manufacturing. Their focus was always stationary power and industrial applications. So why does this story even matter? Well, even though Natron Energy ultimately closed in 2025, its rise and commercialization of sodium-ion technology was incredibly important. And I'm just hoping the US doesn't lose the critical advantage it had about a year ago. I mean, there are no other sodium batteries in the world rated for more than 50,000 discharge cycles. This proved as well that sodium ion could be manufactured at commercial scale in the United States. We don't have to rely on China to do it. It showed extremely long cycle life and safety advantages compared with lithium ion. And it helped pave the way for future sodium ion innovation and greater supply chain diversity in energy storage. It appeared to give America the advantage in the sodium ion battery race as well. The broader sodium ion industry, with players like CATL, BYD, and others taking over now, while it's continuing to develop cells with higher energy densities between 130 to 175 watt-hours per kilogram, which may one day make sodium ion the global battery choice. And it appears that the US once again is falling behind in this critical race to own the global battery market. Natron Energy sodium-ion batteries were groundbreaking. And how so? Well, in terms of their safety, their cost, recyclability, and their cycle life. Offering a potentially more than 50,000 cycles and almost no fire risk meant they truly were groundbreaking. They're ideal for stationary power for data centers and fast charging infrastructure, but they lack the energy density for electric cars, which doesn't matter because the truth is they were never intended for that purpose. Although Natron is no longer operating, its legacy continues to influence how the industry views sodium ion as a complementary technology to lithium. But unfortunately, because of the Trump administration, yet another company has gone the way of the BlackBerry. Thanks for watching.